Hey, welcome back to the Unbelievable Podcast. I am BJ Reidell, back here with my guy, Drew Mahowald. And today, well, we're coming to you with a bit of mixed feelings here because the Vikings got a victory, winning over the Lions at home by a final score of 19-17. And that's all well and good, especially because in recent weeks, we've been dealing with moral victories in situations where we did not, get the result we were looking for, but the team played well. Well, we kind of got the flip side here this week in week 5 from your Minnesota Vikings, in that ultimately the scoreboard shows Vikings are moving to 2-3, got what we needed. But how did we get there? It wasn't the greatest. So we'll talk a little bit about that. We'll talk about what this win means and kind of the situation that it sets up for the Vikings moving forward, including a rather difficult schedule on the horizon here. And then we'll give out some game balls because there were some players that played well. Obviously, when you get a win, there are some things that go right, even if the way that you got there was not the most pleasant of ways. Let's call it that. So that is the general outline for today's show. Let's jump right into it here with the quarterback, as we always do, starting with Kirk Cousins. The line that you're going to see in the box score does not look terrible. 25 for 34, 275, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. But he really didn't feel like it. Like, it did not feel like the Vikings moved the ball well enough for him to have 275 passing yards, considering the fact that with the exception to maybe one drive, it felt like the Vikings were kind of slowly chugging along and then punting basically the entire game.
Well, I don't know if this is on Kirk, if it's on Clint Kubiak, if it's on Mike Zimmer, but just the lack of aggressiveness down the field and always opting for the short throws. That's the part I'm the most frustrated with. And again, I'm not sure exactly who this is all on. I think we know Kirk is kind of the guy that's not going to really go out on a limb and take the chances on his own. He's going to do it if sort of the scheme and the play call, calls for it. But either way, like, you have a guy in Justin Jefferson who I was at the game, and when he got hot early in that game, I was watching him. I locked my eyes on him for essentially every offensive snap, with the exception of kind of the few where Darrisaw would get mixed in there. I try to watch him a little bit, but Jefferson is open every single time he is in one-on-one man coverage. He gets open. He breaks open. It's open every single time. He creates so much separation. And then as we see, when he is running that 9 route and it's one-on-one there, it doesn't matter if he's open because he's going to work back and find the ball and either high point it, or Kirk has become really adept at throwing that ball down the sideline and giving him a good chance to make the play. So the point I'm wrapping up to here is the Vikings need to be more aggressive passing the ball. They need to be more aggressive with it. And whether it's, they take the sack and then it's 2nd and 16 and they bail on the entire series as it is, or whether it's just the seemingly overflow of, short dump off plays to guys that, I'm all for getting the ball to Alexander Madison, when he's the primary running back of the game, but he had 7 receptions in that game. I don't think the Vikings need to be dumping it off to Alexander Madison 7 times a game. And part of this is on Kirk too. I feel like there's probably some plays in there where he maybe dumped it off too quick. I mean, he could have maybe waited a little bit more for the play to develop, and that farther shot down the field was open. Either way, it's just when you have a guy like Kirk who can throw the ball as accurately as almost anybody in the NFL down the field. You have a Justin Jefferson who is probably one of the better route runners in the NFL, especially on those routes that are 10 plus yards downfield, breaking open into the open field. Same thing with Adam Thielen. And I was trying to find that stat. I'll have to try to find it here, but the Vikings are one of the lowest ranked teams in terms of passing attempts, on deep passing attempts this year. When you have that type of personnel and you're kind of wasting it, I do not like that. So this is kind of, I'm kind of deflecting blame from Kirk, but I don't really want to. I mean, I don't know what all the blame is, but the lack of deep pass attempts is what I'm frustrated with.
Yeah, you do need to push down the field a little bit more, right? Like, if you analyze just the first half kind of in a nutshell, right? The first half did not go the Vikings' way, if you will. I mean, they scored a touchdown. They ultimately were leading by a score of 13-6, but they had to settle for field goals on a couple of drives. But overall, it was a rather efficient, half of football for the Vikings offense. They were consistent moving the ball down the field, and that naturally included Justin Jefferson, as Drew was talking about. I believe he racked up about 100 yards or over 100 yards in just that first half alone. It really started for me in terms of the frustration in this game when Mike Zimmer decided, with what was it, 41 seconds left in the first half,
Yeah,
that sitting on a 7-point lead against Detroit when you've scored 13 and a half, you're going to sit on that? That's good enough for you? That was really where the frustration started.
Because I felt like the Lions were gifting the Vikings a possession there by kicking in the first place.
Absolutely.
It was like 4th and 2 with like the 45 seconds left, and the Vikings had the timeout, like 2 timeouts left. Yep. That was gifting the Vikings a chance when they could have
2 timeouts. They could have stopped
the Lions
clock twice.
Could have gone down and scored themselves a touchdown with that time left because there was 40 seconds left. They had timeouts to use, and there was only 2 yards to get on the first down. And so I felt like that was a terrible decision by Campbell, and they were gifting the Vikings a chance there, and Zimmer just wasted it. I did not like that either. I'm with you on that.
And on top of that, I'm watching Red Zone at the same, like simultaneously, right? I've got the Vikings on the big screen. I've got Red Zone on kind of a quad
as
box
one does,
going. Yeah. Right, of course. And naturally, as this is happening, Joe Burrow connects with Jamar Chase with 30 seconds left to go over the top of the Packers defense to, pull within striking distance going into the half. And I'm like, why can't we just try it? Why?
Yeah. Well, then the problem is, and we could get to the whole last second drive that Kirk puts together, but he basically proves that
he's good at it. Yeah, he's really good at it.
He can do that. And he's done it all year. He's done it 3 games this year now where they've had less than a minute to play and they need to get down the field, and he does it.
Every time with 30 seconds or less, or no timeouts, whatever. I mean, you went through it earlier today. What was it? 4 out of 5 games that he's been asked to have like on a game-winning drive.
It's really the Browns game is the only game they didn't do it, and that's because they needed the touchdown instead of the field goal. But the first game of the year, Cincinnati, they had less than a minute maybe. Drove down the field, they get a field goal to try to go overtime. Arizona game, same thing. They're down to I think a minute or maybe a little bit less than that was left. Kirk drives them down the field. They get that 37-yard attempt where, they make that, and we're talking about a different team here. We're talking about a 3-2 football team, and Arizona's no longer undefeated. Same thing then this week. The Vikings, miraculously, albeit, are suddenly down by 1 against Detroit at home here. And Kirk has 30-something seconds to work with, and I believe 2 timeouts, and connects on a couple of nice throws over the middle to Thielen, gets him in field goal range. Joseph hits the game winner. And so Kirk has been sneakily clutch this year, and I wanted to talk about that quite a bit here in the show too, but the outside of that play, the offense and the conservativeness and the lack of downfield aggression, given the personnel you have, is just frustrating to me. Because again, Kirk passing down the field with a clean pocket he's among the greats in the league at that. And then you have Jefferson, who's not going to be covered one-on-one. You have Thielen, who is as savvy of a route runner as there is, sure-handed. He can make the tough catches, and it's not like has his prime speed anymore, but he certainly can get open on those deeper plays, and they're not using it. And so, and of course, KJ Osborne has broken out to be a very viable option as well. So they're wasting all these options to me, wasting all these assets that they have by being so conservative and kind of doing that grounded pound game. Not to take away from Alexander Mattison, the guy's great runner of the football, but man, it just seems like you have an offense that can be explosive. We saw it last year with the way this team performed. It's just, I'm trying to figure out the reasoning behind it.
And this is against the Lions too, by the way. Like, why wouldn't you just try to get to 21 as fast as you can? You're probably going to win if you get to 21 against this team, right?
Yeah. Well, speaking of that, the Lions. So remember, was it 2 years ago? They went to Detroit, and the Lions were scoring points on them. I believe it was like a 35-30 game, maybe. Late in the fourth quarter, Vikings had the ball. It was a 3rd down play, and they dialed up a play action deep shot where Diggs got open behind the defense for like a 50-60 yard gain to ice the game. They eventually scored on that drive, which ended up being the dagger for sure. But that deep throw is what I've been wanting the Vikings to do when they have this lead. And that, the same thing happened last year where they get that lead and they get conservative, and they're kind of, it's that same mantra. They're playing scared. They're playing not to lose. They're playing to not make the mistake instead of just playing to be the aggressor, which is, that's the sentiment this team has had really for years now. It's been kind of that same thing. It just so happens to be in 2017 it was masked because of how dominant that defense was. But since then, the defense has dwindled off, and now we're seeing the ramifications of it.
I mean, it's strange because, first of all, 16 points, sitting on 16 points and trying to win an NFL football game at that number and being like, we're going to try to chew up clock and win the football game with that many points. That's asinine. Like that's borderline malpractice. Like in what world does 16 points win you a football game even 75% of the time? It doesn't. You need 21 at least. And in this league right now, you kind of need 30. So why aren't you shooting for that number, especially when you've seen Detroit come back? Like for what? I mean, we said it on the show. They don't have a lot of talent right now, but they're as gritty as they come. They're going to fight to the death in this game. And that's exactly what they did. The Vikings basically baited them throughout this entire second half. They're like, all right, we're going to try to run the ball. We're going to run on 3rd and 8. We're going to run on 3rd and 14. We're going to throw this drive away on 2nd and 20 after a holding penalty. We're going to give you the ball back as many times as you want because we don't think you can stop us, and we don't think you're going to score on us again. Well, you know what? On the 7th try or whatever, Detroit scored.
You give them enough chances. You just hand them, enough punts, right?
The Vikings should have lost this game. They should have lost this game. They blew that opportunity.
The way they mismanaged it was, talking about fireable offenses and hot seats and stuff. Like,
Joseph
that conversation,
Zimmer's job.
That conversation is had if Joseph doesn't make that kick, the Vikings lose this game because 16. Okay, I'm going to be dead honest with people listening to this. I'm not necessarily proud of this, but I went to the game. I left after Joseph nailed the 55-yarder to make it 16-6. I left. I was done. I was like, this game's fine. I had a great experience at US Bank Stadium, of course, but the football itself was ugly. I'm done. I'm going to beat the rush. I told my friends I'd pick up Raising Cane's for one on the way back. Wanted to get in line early. That's what I did. All of a sudden, listen to the radio. And by the way, Paul Allen and Pete Burstich were awesome. That whole collapse sequence was entertaining stuff. But so, yeah, maybe I'm the person to blame here for the curse of leaving the stadium too early. But there's so much of this that's frustrating to me. And it's the worst feeling win I can remember in recent times. Like, at least there's been a comfortable amount of positives take away from a win, but like the defense kind of played how we expected them to. That was the Lions aren't a powerhouse offense. They've dominated the Lions before. That wasn't really surprising to me. It was a good performance, but then the offense was just so ugly, kind of picked up right where they left off in that Cleveland game. It's tough. It's frustrating again, like the 4th time today. The weapons they have, the arm strength and accuracy Cousins has down the field, the receivers that they have, it baffles me that they don't, attack that more often.
And really, like there's someone out there right now, whether it's Rashad Breeland or someone else, just saying, just be happy with the win. What are you so pissed off about? I am happy with the win. Like, let's make no mistake about that. We're in a short moment here. We're going to get to some of the positives as well. And, the fact the Vikings are moving to 2 and 3. Very happy about that. But I'm concerned about the process. And I think we talk about this every time something good happens, but you get there kind of like the wrong way. Like, do you remember in high school or middle school? I don't even remember when you were solving math problems and like you'd solve an answer and they tell you to show your work. And if your work was wrong, you get a point off on the problem.
Yep. Oh, yeah.
That's basically what I'm doing right now as an adult. This is the adult version of that math problem. The equation is X plus Y equals W, and the Vikings got the W, but I do not think they put in the right variables to get there, and I'm pissed about it. It's the wrong process. This is wrong. You can't sit on a 16-point lead.
You beat like 2 out of the 32 teams with the performance that they put on the field at US Bank Stadium.
And I'm concerned because you're 2 and 3. You need to step on the neck now. You can't give any team the opportunity to come back. Next week, you're going to play Carolina. They're very hungry, and they're pissed that they lost this past game against Philadelphia, and I believe they're on a 2-game losing streak. You're going to get their best in North Carolina. What? You can't do this. If you get up 16-6 on Carolina, you're going to lose 31-19. Like Greg Joseph, very happy with his performance. It goes back to, I'll echo what I was saying before. This guy could have spiraled and fallen apart. Hey, he could have done it this week too, missing a 49-yarder that was relatively clutch situation. But he goes 4 for 5. He's the difference in this game, and that's all good, well and good. But like ultimately, you don't want your kicker kicking. Like start going for it. Start trying to win. Start trying to score more
Settling
points.
For field goals is not something to be proud of. Like,
no,
like
it's not.
I get this, and the sentiment seems to be scoring on a drive is good, and obviously scoring points is better than not scoring points. But I don't know about you, but as a fan, I get upset when my team kicks a field goal because that's not the goal of any drive. Any drive, the goal is to score a touchdown.
Mhm.
And so if you didn't score a touchdown on that drive, something went wrong. And it seems like, the bothering thing to me is it seemed like the Vikings did this a few times where you got a good drive going, you got a good flow going. Let's say they get to the Detroit 25 or 30 yard line or the opposing 25, 30 yard line. All of a sudden, Kirk takes a sack on first down. Well, now it's 2nd and 18, and
They run the
it
ball.
seems like so often they just give up. Like they don't even try to get the first down. It's either a screen play for 6 yards and it's 3rd and long, or it's a handoff draw play for 3 yards and it's 3rd and long still. Like that's the part that baffles me is they're so content with field goals, and A, given the history of field goals in Minnesota, but also B, just the nature of the game and how mandatory it is now to score touchdowns. And especially, I mean, there's just so many reasons to dislike that strategy for me. I hate that approach. You score touchdowns to win in the NFL, especially against the best teams in the league. They score touchdowns every game. They don't settle for field goals. They're not kicking 4 field goals every week. They're scoring touchdowns. The Vikings are not doing that right now. And it's costing them games. And it almost cost them a game against the Detroit Lions.
Well, I mean, you can just look so far as the Kansas City Buffalo game last night. I mean, Buffalo was scoring touchdowns. Kansas City was kicking field goals. Kansas City ended up getting boat raced by one of the best offenses in the NFL. The Vikings were playing the Lions. Imagine if it was, I mean, any of these teams coming up. I just mentioned Carolina before. You got Dallas after the bye. You think 16 is going to be good enough to sit on it on
Dallas just scored
Dallas?
45. They just scored 45.
Okay, so let's change the process here. That's basically what I'm ramping up to. I mean, we can cut kind of the negativity on that mark, but that's what between now and Dallas, we got to figure out how to change that process a little bit. I don't necessarily mean stop running on first down all the time. I don't necessarily mean stop running draws on 2nd and 12 because that can work. Like they're in theory that those plays can work, but ramp it up to something. Right? Like that's the most frustrating part because like in theory, when you're calling plays, you're not just calling the individual play, you're calling plays for the future too. So when you're drawing in the defense with all of these run plays, like outside run after outside run after outside run, so then the inside run, and then all of these runs should be setting up something else. Right? Mm-hmm. In theory, so that when you get to the 3rd quarter and Madison's got 17 rushes and the safeties are coming up on you, you've got Jefferson over the top one-on-one and basically can beat anyone in the secondary one-on-one, sometimes 2-on-1. You get that opportunity as a result. So, like, play into your hand. Like, if you're going to be a running football team, all right, I can live with that. But, like, you got to take advantage of the good things about being a running football team. The things that Tennessee is able to do with play action with A.J. Brown and Julio Jones when he's available. Because Henry forces 8 in the box, because Dalvin Cook forces 8 in the box, you have to take that shot, that 12 to 18 yarder, hell, the 20 plus yarder as well. That's open because you have 2 great receivers and a running back that demands someone to come up in the box from a defensive back position. Take advantage of it. That's all I'm asking. Great that you won. Ultimately, 2 and 3 is all you needed here. Like, I really don't care about the fact that you almost lost because you did win. And like I said at the top, a moral loss is not fun. I'm done with it. I prefer to get the victory, even if it's ugly. We've done the reverse and it hasn't been fun. But let's change the process before we get to Dallas, because that's going to be a boat race otherwise. Like, it's going to be a real problem. So with that being said, there are some positives here, and there are some things that can lead to optimism moving forward here, right? Like, it's not just an individual positive moment here. We have Christian Darrisaw getting his first reps and looking good. That's something that doesn't just matter for the Dallas game that I've been talking about, but that matters for the Dallas game in 6 years from now as well. He looks very content as a rookie. Like, he looks like a solid NFL caliber player that I'm ready for him to start. I don't think there's any reason to believe that he's not more talented or ready to go in terms of generating successful results on a snap-to-snap basis than Rashad Hill is. So, I mean, I'm ready. That's the biggest positive for me, is you might have found your left tackle of the future. Granted,
positive,
it is a great pass rush, but
it's positive to see him play well, perform well. I was rattled by the whole swapping tackles thing. Just play the guy. Why do that? There's no reason to do that, because Darrisaw's a rookie. He's trying to get into a rhythm. The last, I'm not considered the last thing for a guy that, you would want to do is that, because he's still getting game time in the NFL regular season. But I do. I mean, I'm kind of a believer in players having a rhythm of some kind, getting comfortable, getting used to things. How is Darisaw going to get comfortable and getting into a rhythm in his first NFL action if he's swapping out series with another tackle? Don't agree with that. It takes me back to 2016 in the Philadelphia game. They went to Philadelphia where they had just signed Jake Long. This is the TJ Clemmings, Jake Long situation where they were swapping those guys back and forth. Obviously didn't work. And I don't agree with that. So pick a left tackle for the Carolina game. Don't care who it is. But then to your point, I do think Darisaw is the guy you start for sure after the bye week because it seems like he had a pretty solid, he was fairly comfortable, looked very, capable already in his first action.
I think he gives you the best chance to win. That's how I feel right now. That's how I feel. This isn't just a development matter. But giving him more reps out there in theory will make him a better football player. This is also, I think he's the best player at the left tackle position that the Vikings have on their depth chart right now. So that's a big positive for me. I know it's a small sample size, and I know this is kind of a Monday overreaction as well. Like I'm not saying he's Trent Williams or anything like that, but he does look very good. His first reps, both in pass protection and as kind of a running rush attack mauler, were really good. I was happy with him, and one thing that I noticed too is that he has the mentality to be a lineman based off of video, right? Like I could see him looking for work, which is a term that offensive linemen love to use, right? As soon as you don't have a guy directly in front of your face, you're looking to your left, you're looking to your right to find someone else to either help out one of your teammates or find someone that's trying to cut through a hole. That's called looking for work, and it's something that Darisaw did on multiple plays yesterday. And it's something that you notice right away. I mean, there's a difference between looking for work and not knowing what you're doing, right? Like he was trying to find answers to questions that he already seemed to have the answer to. He didn't look like a rookie out there. He was a smart football player. He seemed ready. And as long as that, as long as his health holds up, he's got to be out there moving forward because at the very least, you're developing a player at this point. He's ready to go. He's ready for that development stage, I believe. So big positive coming out of Minnesota against Detroit in that game. On the other side here, of course, when the defense, when the opposing offense only scores 17 points, you're going to have some highlight moments for the defense as well. I know there are some missed opportunities, and really Detroit had some missed opportunities with Kirk as well. But as a whole, I think you have to be fairly satisfied with the performance of this collective unit on defense against an offense that may not have a lot of playmakers, but they have shown that an ability to put up points in the recent weeks.
I mean, they did what they were supposed to do, which I think right now, with this team and the way that defense kind of started the year, they were struggling against Cincy. They struggled against Arizona. There was some questions about this defense, but it seems like they've really picked it up the last 2.5 games or so. That for really the first half of that Seattle game was the last time there were some big concerns. After that, they've really stepped it up. The pass rush has been there. It seems like things are tightening up a little bit on the back end, but really it just seems like the pass rush is getting to a point where it's getting there a little bit quicker and just making things so much easier on the secondary. So, and Patrick Pearson is making some plays. He had a couple of nice breakups in the Detroit game here. So it's not perfect. It's not 2017, but you're seeing some of that opportunistic, the tendency there that kind of was there in the prime Zimmer Vikings defense days, seeing some of that come back right now, which I think is really fun to see. So I like the sense that it was comforting for me as a fan to watch this game against a lesser Lions team. And throughout the whole game, I was confident this Vikings defense isn't going to give up the big plays, isn't going to give up a ton of yards or, a ton of points because they're going to do what they had to do.
It's one of those games where you kind of question, like, all right, like what does this film mean, right? Like the pass rush looked really good. Of course, Wanham gets a sack, Hunter gets a sack, and Everson Griffin had a pair. And then on top of that, you got 7 quarterback hits as well. Like the pressure was getting there, but how much stock do you put on it? I mean, these are professionals, of course. Like it's an NFL game. These count towards your career totals. Like this sack doesn't mean anything less than a sack from the past, but it is against Detroit, so I'm curious to see if this pass rush is truly improving at the rate that it appears to, or if this is just kind of a fluky, all right, you're playing against a rookie left tackle, an inferior right tackle.
I think the way they played against Cleveland last week was kind of like this to me, like validates what they did against Cleveland last week to me, where they were high pressure rate. Baker was not comfortable. I think you kind of see it validated this week, albeit against Detroit. But I mean, even the reason they scored a touchdown is because Madison fumbled at their own 20. I mean, they didn't have a touchdown before that. So I think I'm not like, the Vikings defense, the prime Vikings defense is back, from the 2017 days. No, but it's certainly at a point where I think it is much improved from 2020. I think now just finding a way for that offense to get kind of back to 2020 level, then you can kind of see this team maybe start to compete a little bit better and more consistently with better teams. But defensively, I'm pleased Anthony Barr is back. He was hustling, he's making plays, he's shooting gaps a lot better than we saw from Vigil, So that was a nice sight to see there. I'm sure he'll get more comfortable with more game reps here.
Absolutely. Eric Kendricks remains the best coverage linebacker in the NFL. His catch radius is absurd. That interception that he had was not just an important interception, but an impressive physical feat as well. He's an outstanding player and continues to patrol the middle of the field as well as anyone out there. Did Cam Dantzler play yesterday? Because I didn't see him. If he did,
Breeland got a lot of play. So here's the thing about Breeland. He makes. I thought he made a couple of nice plays, nice tackles, whether it was, it's like a 3rd and 8 and he's tackling the guy short of the sticks or things like that. And the run support, the coverage thing obviously is, in terms of letting guys open, is obviously to hit the primary job as a cornerback. Whatever. It seems like Zimmer likes him. So clearly there's a discrepancy between
I think what Zimmer thinks because he does tackle.
And the Pro Football Focus thing. And I think that's what it is. It's probably a little bit of Breeland's attitude too. And I think it's probably honestly the way he snapped back at Thomason. Zimmer's like, yeah, I like this guy. But I don't hate Breeland as much as I feel like I should. I don't know. Maybe that's just like that big play to give up has not been there for a few weeks. So I think I'm kind of like easing up my disdain, I guess. But we'll get to a point here where it's Carolina and DJ Moore flies by him next week, or Dallas in a few weeks, whatever the case might be, and then that'll come back, I'm sure.
I think he's still the weakest link, but he hasn't reared his ugly head in that regard lately. I will say that he is a good tackler, and that's definitely why Zimmer likes him, because he loves his corners to tackle first and foremost, where most people prefer them to cover first.
I mean, remember how good Trey Waynes got at tackling when he came into the league?
And it was scared. He was scared to tackle the first game against
one of the best run. He came
Steelers in the Hall of Fame game.
Right. And he became one of the best like run defending corners in the NFL. Those last couple of years in Minnesota. So clearly that was a trait they're looking for with Breeland, and he fulfills that. It's just, this is the passing league, and you're going to have more, that's your job. It entails more of defending a player in pass defense than helping out against the run most of the time. So.
All right. So I think we got a pretty good overall review of what happened yesterday. Not good enough offensively, but good enough to win. And then defensively keeps chugging along, does its thing against the team that we consider to be an inferior opponent. Looks that way on paper as well. So Vikings defense heading up. Vikings offense seemingly trending down and not really at the most optimal of times, but you are 2-3. Like I said before, this gives you the opportunity to go 3-3 into your bye and then be realistically back in NFC contention against Dallas in 3 weeks out from now. Is it a considerable thing to hope this Vikings team will accomplish to get back to 3-3 against Carolina, have this bye, and then compete with Dallas? I mean, some things got to go right, but the fact is that they do have the opportunity there now. And again, this is a 17-game season, so 2-3 is not necessarily terrible. So that big kick from Greg Joseph, I think it saved Mike Zimmer's job. I think, Greg Joseph continues to have a very good season with the exception of the one kick in Arizona. And ultimately 2-3 is all that matters. And you're going to have the opportunity next week, starting with Carolina.
I'll say this too, before we move on to the, giving out game balls, I want to say, like, we've talked about luck on this show a little bit, how it seems like the Vikings have sort of had bad luck in, the missed field goal and kind of the way things shook out in Cincinnati with the Dalvin fumble. This seems like it was kind of the balancing act a little bit, where the Vikings did not deserve to win this game. And the way it played out at the end, they mismanagement of everything. this feels like they kind of got one, like the football gods gave them back one a little bit here. So like people kind of say, well, 1-3 isn't really indicative of what the Vikings are. I think, 2-3 kind of is. You have a couple that you probably should have won earlier in the season, but didn't. This one feels like it should have been a loss, and it wasn't. So I'm kind of, that luck argument now that I see sometimes, I'm kind of out on that now. I think it was valid the first couple of weeks, when it was something like the actual chance of the Vikings both missing that 37-yard kick and that Dalvin fumble was like 1.3%, but the chances of the Vikings winning this game after the Lions went for 2, which by the way, bravo to Dan Campbell for going for 2 there. I love that. But the chances of them winning that game after the way they the way they basically coughed the whole thing up, they didn't deserve that one. So I'm kind of, the football gods gave one back.
Yeah, the pendulum swung back in the quote right direction, or in the good guys' direction, relative to us at least. You kind of think that Detroit's got some good luck coming their way as well. By the way,
oh my God, yeah,
beaten by a 55-yarder.
They've lost 2 games this year. They've lost 2 games this year, 19-17, and one was on a 66-yard field goal, and one was on a 54-yard field goal. And that's correct. Yeah, I mean the Lions could very easily be 2-3, 3-2 football team. Right now, they're the best 0-5 team. They have to be in the league right now.
The one thing I will say about this, and then we'll give out these game balls, is just that you hate to use your luck on this one, right? Like I think that's what's so frustrating is that you had to use your luck here, right?
If you're the type of person that believes like there's a certain amount of luck the team gets every year,
I'm like that.
Like using a lot of it against Detroit is not ideal. I
believe in odds. And to me, every time you use up one of your quote good results, it lowers your odds, which is wrong. I know how math works. I don't know how math works, but like I understand. I know I'm wrong.
You understand that the likelihood of a lucky event does not,
it goes
decrease
down
or increase the chance of a lucky event the next time. Yeah.
Yeah, it's whatever. This is not a math show, so let's give out game balls. I'll start because I think there's a couple of them here. But I want to give it to Everson Griffen this week specifically. Here's why. He's not supposed to be here first and foremost, right? The plan was not for Everson Griffen to be with the Minnesota Vikings in 2021. The hope was that DJ Wanham or, Stephen Weatherly, someone else would ascend to that spot. He has forced his way back here. He's on a very, very generous contract. And he's got a sack in the last 3 games consistently, at least 1 sack in all 3 games. He got 2 of them here in Detroit. So really you can't say, it's Detroit's offense. Well, it's everyone. He's getting sacks on everyone right now. And he's got 4 sacks in 4 games played for him specifically. So he is doing exactly what you brought him in to do and more, really. I think he has ascended to being an official starter. And really, this game was kind of just icing on the cake. Everson Griffen is back. He's real. He might get 10 sacks this year opposite to Neil Hunter, who, by the way, might get 15, 16, 17 sacks of his own.
That was going to be my pick actually for game ball. That was my number 1. But I agree with you 100%. I mean, Griffen, he made Penei Sewell look like a D3 undrafted player. No offense to Ben Barch, I guess that's probably not the way I should phrase that, but he looked like Sewell was lost on 2 straight plays there. Both were sacks by Griffen, or at least I maybe got a half sack on one of them. But that spin move is still there. I mean, Everson Griffen spin move, he works all game to set that thing up. And when he executes it, it is a thing of beauty. It's still there. He'll be putting a spin move on tackles for the next 10 years still, probably. The guy has that energy, that charisma, that leadership, that the motivation that he brings to the team. I love that energy that he has. So good for him. I loved seeing that. My game ball, I go Justin Jefferson. It's a pretty easy pick. The guy's open all the time. I am fearful of the Stephon Diggs event happening here with Jefferson, because the guy should not be getting only 8 targets in a game where he dominated the first half. I think he had 5 for 104 in the first half. And they just went away from him. That's the most insane thing to me. This guy is open every single play. And if he's not, you can still throw it to him. He's probably going to catch the ball if it's a kind of jump ball scenario. The guy's great at high pointing the ball, in breaking routes, out breaking routes, after the catch. The guy does everything. And for him to only get 8 targets in a game that was still in doubt, still in contest, still being contested throughout the whole game, guys should be seeing double-digit targets every single week. And but regardless, the Vikings found a superstar here in Jefferson, and he's easy to root for as well. Very fun to have him around, and it's just a thing of beauty to watch him just devastate cornerbacks.
Absolutely. He's outstanding, and he really was, the most consistent, like, dynamic presence for the Vikings offense against the Lions. Madison was good, but he was more of a chugger. Jefferson, on the other hand, was racking up first downs with regularity, making great plays. He did have the one that went off the top of his hands that really was a Kirk problem. That was almost picked off, but another great game for Jefferson. He's extremely impressive, and I believe his rate in terms of catch percentage, yards per game, etc., is actually higher than it was at this point last year.
So yards per game, catch rate, and receptions per game are all up from last year, which it doesn't seem like crazy. That because he kind of got it was a kind of a slow first game, but he's and it still feels like he's not being targeted enough, which is something to note about how special he is. And I don't want, because we know how impressive Diggs is and what he became last year when he went to Buffalo, when he actually got a fair amount of targets. I'm really afraid of that happening again, which is another reason I'm harping on this whole pass the ball more, be more aggressive thing, because you have a guy like Jefferson who's so special. Don't want to lose him. You want to take advantage of it and use it to the full advantage you have while he's in Minnesota.
My final question here, just on that note, because that was going to be kind of my final thought here today, was that what incentive does Justin Jefferson have to remain here after his rookie contract is up? Like, the NFL
right now, none.
That's my point.
I mean, so, like, he doesn't have one.
The NFL doesn't have the, kind of the max deal that the NBA does, where it kind of incentivizes players to stay on the team that drafted him. There's no reason for him to believe that he can't have more success in a different offense or a different styled offense. Really, the only incentive Jefferson has through, 1.5 years of his career to, continue playing for Minnesota long-term is familiarity. And what is that worth? I don't know how much. So I mean, it's something to think about. It really doesn't matter. And it's something to think. It's something that we don't want to put this in your head when really it's not something to think about.
I wonder, because it worked out so well for the Vikings. I mean, in the sense that they were able to get Jefferson to fall to them in the draft, even though, they gave up Diggs, which another one of those process versus results thing. Like, that's bad process to trade your superstar receiver who's the best route runner in the league. And they got super lucky to get Jefferson. I hope some sort of message has been sent to their front office or coaching staff. Like, if your star receiver wants out, and it's apparently, as we've heard, it was due to their philosophy of run first, maybe internally ask that question. Maybe we should be improving what we do. And Jefferson, it's fine. He's putting up really good numbers. Don't get me wrong, but he's being that efficient where just keep going to the guy, and don't waste him. Don't, get the 4 years out of him. This team is terrible right now, so they're not going to be competitive. And then when you actually are able to put together a competitive roster, then he wants out because you're trying to run the ball too much. That's what I'm afraid of. I hope the Vikings don't fall into that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's your playmaker. He's got to be the guy. You got to shift your focus a little bit here. And if nothing else, I mean, for the safety of Dalvin Cook, you should probably start throwing the ball a little bit more, or at least, finding a different balance. Instead of the kind of 65-35.
I'm a little bit pleased that they did sit Dalvin for the sake of his long term, and he was trying to say all week, move. He was saying all week, oh, I'm going to be, I'm not 100%, but I'm going to play through it. And it's like, well, with already missing a third of your career games, probably don't want to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the Vikings were able to get it done despite the lack of Dalvin Cook. Ugly win, but it's a win nonetheless. Any final thoughts before we get out of here?
I love Brandon Staley.
He's a lot of fun,
Chargers head coach, dude. I love his approach to fourth downs, and maybe it's just because I'm becoming one of those nerd analytics guys who's always like, win probability on fourth down, you got to go for it. But he went for a 4th and 2 at his own 25, and I think the third quarter, went for a 4th and 7 in a tie game. I believe just past midfield there.
I remember questioning that one.
So, and I mean, I love it because I think it's the approach to fourth downs, but also B, that just shows a ton of trust in your players, and your players are going to want to play for you more. So I love that guy. And I think, that's the type of coach that type of mindset that I want the Vikings to have.
Yeah, especially with kind of some strange news stories going on with coaches right now between John Gruden and Urban Meyer. I mean, Brandon Staley looks like a hell of a hire,
Yeah,
right?
he
And that
does.
was only that was last year, right? He's either a rookie
Yeah.
or a second year head coach. So, I mean, yeah, he's a lot of fun, man. And like I said before on the last show, if you haven't heard his philosophy on running the football, definitely go back and listen to that quote.
Yeah.
He's
Mhm.
outstanding. He just understands the game and he understands the contemporary game, which is kind of where the love is lost with Mike Zimmer right now. But that's a story for another day. So until then, make sure to check out the rest of the Climbing the Pocket network. You get, like I said before, on every show pretty much recently, we have Climbing the Pocket has live shows Monday through Friday, podcasts throughout the week as well. Bunch of different content creators. So if you don't like me or you don't like Drew for some reason, go check someone else out. There's plenty of different kind of approaches on our team. Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, wherever else you listen to our podcast, you can find us there. You can find us on Daily Norseman as well. Feel free to drop us a comment. We enjoy reading those. It's always fun for us. And until then, we'll be back later on this week to discuss the Carolina matchup here. Another very big one for the Vikings given their current standing, but an opportunity to get back to the 500 mark. And I think it's a real opportunity as well, especially given Carolina's recent performance. So we'll dive deeper into that and then we'll head into the weekend. So thank you as always for listening, and we'll catch you guys later on this week.